Welcome to the Nanny Podcast. I'm Hanna Schaer, the owner of Riviera Nannies, a worldwide nanny agency based in the south of France. I feel very passionately about everything nanny. One of the most important things we do at our agency is making sure our nannies have the careers and jobs that fit them the best, and we love supporting them in all areas of their lives and careers. That's why I wanted to start the Nanny Podcast. Here we talk about all things nanny, the good, the bad, and the awesome. Thank you for spending some time with me today and for listening to our podcast. Welcome to this week's episode of the Nanny Podcast. We are in season 2 and this is episode 6, The Nanny as Educator. My name is Hanna Schaer from Riviera Nannies and I'm your host today. And I'm so happy that you're here. Today we're going to talk about the nanny as educator. I think that when a lot of families think about hiring a nanny or even do hire a nanny, they think about it as someone who is going to look after their kids and keep them safe. But you and I know that there are benefits way beyond keeping safe and looking after when it comes to what a nanny can do, both for your family and your child's education. As a nanny, you have a huge responsibility, not only to keep your kids safe, but to set a good example and emotionally nurture the kids, and to teach them. We know that kids do what we do, not what we say, so setting a good example in your behavior is so important. That's also why parents who are hiring a nanny should look for how a nanny carries herself, how she communicates, and how she interacts. That's what's going to imprint on your kids if they spend a lot of time together. Your nanny can teach manners. They can teach your kids how to be respectful to all people and to always say please and thank you, provided that's how they are themselves. I personally don't believe that you can be one person in private and one at work. I don't know about you, but I don't really fit into one category of a parenting style. I like to think that I'm pretty laid back and progressive, but then I find myself really valuing some traditional values as well. And one of my biggest pet peeves are kids that are rude and don't know how to not to be rude. I'm not talking about less than perfect here. I mean kids who act inappropriately towards others. This is maybe a can of worms, and it might vary a lot between cultures. We are famously a mixed culture family who mixes and matches, but this is where the person you choose as a nanny comes in. Your nanny is probably going to be spending a lot of time with your children, so you want to make sure that they teach your children the values that you promote as a family. This is a great opportunity and potentially really good news. When you have a good fit with your nanny and the family, she or he will be an essential part of your child's education, and they learn how to navigate socially based on the cues you give them, but also the day-to-day, minute-to-minute things their nanny teaches them. So if your nanny is adamant about pleases and thank yous, your child might be too. And if you think about how being kind and considerate sets you up for success, the choice of person who is part of your parenting team becomes bigger. I know one family where the little girl has grown up with the nanny as a primary caretaker. A highly educated, very focused nanny, and this girl is the most well-rounded, empathetic, and polite child you will ever meet. She could have been spoiled and entitled, but she's not, thanks to being raised by an amazing nanny. That's a good example of both good parenting and good nannying, a team working together to give the kid the best it can have. And your nanny is good for teaching all kinds of things to your kids, like tying their shoes, literally and metaphorically. When I was a kid, I had the fastest and coolest shoes. I don't remember the brand, I think it was Lejon, but they were light blue, had white stripes, and Velcro binding. I was the first one out on the playground at recess, probably because I didn't have to tie my shoes. I went to school in Sweden, and there you take your shoes off inside. That's just a side point. My dad always loved technology and novelties. In Sweden in the early 1980s, Velcro shoes were very new and cool and hip. So were digital watches. So even though my dad meant the best for me when he got me those cool gadgets, I didn't learn to tie my shoes or read time until I was a bit older. I did have a cool watch, though, from Donald Duck, which was my favorite character. There are so many big and small gestures, much smaller than tying our shoes or reading time, that our kids are learning every day. The person spending time with them is going to be their guide, learning a lot of those things, like holding a pen, grow some fine motor skills, recognizing the nuance of colors and shapes, seeing relationships between objects, and navigating different surfaces. Every little thing they meet and experience each day is an opportunity to learn and relate. You want the person next to your child to be tuned in and conscious of that. Your nanny will help develop your kids' gross and fine motor skills, like holding that pen. Children are naturally creative. I find that observing my kids make things, tell stories around their creations, and getting to experience their world through their play and creativity is a way of getting to know them in a very deep and meaningful way. Drawing, painting, mark making in general is such an important and fun part of their development, from learning to hold and handle a pen to the brain-hand connection that helps them process their stories and information in a way a tablet doesn't, is significant. The time, the patience, the slow pace it takes to master skills like this is often overlooked, but it's essential. One of the things I'm personally really fascinated by, both for myself and my family, but also for work, is neuroplasticity. It's how our thoughts, actions, experiences, and relationships physically change our brains and the way that we think. How our brains can be rewired and our triggers and reactions can be changed. I'm also interested and inspired by relationships between people, energies and objects, and I think it's pretty amazing how we throughout our lives can rewire our brains. Just imagine the possibilities. Imagine exercising and strengthening the connections that make the pathways in our brains. And imagine your kid having a conscious person next to them while they're doing all that. I have a friend that I love very much. Her name is Cara, and she's a visual communicator and facilitator. And she told me something that I really loved. When you work visually, like you doodle or draw something while listening to something or learning something, or just generally express yourself visually, your brain lights up in a completely different way than if you're just reading or listening to something. And you process information more efficiently if you're doodling while listening. Did you know that? I didn't, but I like it. This is one reason that we ask our families to incorporate a visual element at the end of the client intake when hiring a nanny. Through your drawing or mark making or making the avatar, we get a lot of information about who you are and what you like, in a way that we don't with a questionnaire. We can communicate the same way with our children. Allowing space for creativity and visual thinking makes better results because it goes deeper for both children and for adults. Thank you so much for listening and spending some time with me today. If you have any comments on today's episode, if you would like to ask any questions, or if you just want to say hi, you can always email me at hello@rivieranannies.fr, and please put podcast in the subject line. I really love hearing from you. Today's episode is brought to you by Mama Toto, the place where mothers go for education, support, and connection. It's a great place to learn about prenatal nutrition, take courses to prepare for pregnancy and birth, and find support into motherhood. Check them out at mamatoto.info. I will see you next week when we will be talking about ending a job. Until then, be safe and be awesome. Bye.